Okay, so I want you to start by picturing something very specific. Picture a stretch of water, not an ocean, not a sea, a channel. At its narrowest point, it is about 33 kilometers wide. That's it. You could almost see one shore from the other on a clear day. A strong swimmer, in theory, could make it across. Now I want you to hold that image in your head, because through that one narrow gap flows roughly 20% of the world's oil, 1 in every 5 barrels that the planet burns. Japan gets the majority of its energy through it. China, India, South Korea, large parts of Europe, all of them depend on that one thin line of water. And right now, in June of 2026, the country that physically sits on the northern edge of that channel, Iran, has spent the last 3 months demonstrating something that I think most people still have not fully absorbed. They have shown that the most powerful military in the history of the world cannot force that channel back open. Not with 11 aircraft carriers, not with the most advanced air force ever built, not with a defense budget larger than the next 9 countries combined. And today, I want to walk you through exactly why. Because once you understand the structure of what's happening here, not the headlines, the structure, the entire war looks completely different from the way it's being sold to you on cable news. If this is the kind of analysis you want, the kind that looks underneath the noise, subscribe before we start, because this is going to take all 20 minutes to do properly. Okay, let's go. First, let's establish the facts. Not the interpretation, the facts, because you always start there. On the 28th of February 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated air campaign against Iran. Within hours, they had killed Iran's supreme leader and a large number of senior officials. Militarily, on paper, it was a stunning opening blow. Iran's response was not to surrender. Iran's response was to reach for the one lever that actually hurts. Within days, the Revolutionary Guard announced that the Strait of Hormuz was closed. Any vessel attempting to pass could be treated as a target. And here is the first thing I want you to really sit with. Iran did not need a navy to do this. The US and Israel had spent weeks pounding Iran's conventional forces. It didn't matter, because closing Hormuz does not require a navy. It requires cheap sea mines, cheap drones, and a willingness to make insurance companies panic. That's it. The International Energy Agency later described what followed as the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Let that phrase land. Not one of the largest, the largest. The conflict, including the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, has been characterized as the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Brent crude surged past $120 a barrel. The world's biggest liquefied natural gas exporter, Qatar, declared force majeure, a legal way of saying we physically cannot deliver what we promised. Brent crude surged past $120 per barrel, and Qatar Energy was forced to declare force majeure on all exports. So that's where we start. One narrow channel, 20% of the world's oil, closed by a country that had just been told it had no military left. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the obvious question is, Why can't America just reopen it? And the answer is the heart of this entire video. So let me give it to you as a framework. 5 reasons built on observable facts, not speculation. Reason number 1, the math of the weapons is upside down. This is the single most important thing to understand about this war, and almost nobody on television explains it clearly. Iran's primary tool is the cheap drone, the Shahed family. These cost, depending on the estimate, somewhere in the tens of thousands of dollars each. Call it the price of a mid-range car. To shoot one of those down, the United States and its partners reach for systems like Patriot and THAAD. The interceptor missiles for those systems cost in the range of millions of dollars apiece, and you frequently need more than one shot to guarantee a kill. So follow the arithmetic with me. Iran spends the price of a car. America spends the price of a small mansion to stop it, over and over and over again. That is a cost-exchange ratio running heavily in Iran's favor. Now, you cannot win a war of attrition when every exchange drains you and barely scratches your opponent. The richest country on earth is being financially bled by one of the cheapest weapons on earth, and the side with the cheap weapon can simply make more of them faster than you can make the expensive thing that stops them. That's reason 1. The economics of the battlefield are inverted. Reason number 2. Geography cannot be bombed. Here's the part the air campaign could never solve. Iran's coast along the strait is mountainous, layered, and deep. The other side, the Gulf states, is flat, exposed. Their oil fields, their ports, their refineries, their desalination plants. All of it sits in the open, in the desert, within easy reach. You can destroy a missile factory. You cannot destroy a mountain range. And as long as Iran can hide mobile launchers and small, fast boats along that coastline, it retains the ability to threaten the channel. The US can degrade Iran's stockpiles. It cannot delete Iran's geography. And geography is the actual weapon here. Reason number 3, the blockade cuts both ways. In response to the closure, the United States imposed a naval blockade on Iran. Strong move on paper, but think about what a blockade in this specific waterway actually does. In the conflict, the United States imposed a naval blockade on Iran. It doesn't just squeeze Iran, it freezes the entire choke point. The same channel America wants to keep open for its allies' oil is the channel it is now trying to seal off for Iran. You cannot fully blockade Hormuz and fully reopen Hormuz at the same time. Those two goals are in direct tension. So the US ends up improvising, stopping some ships, quietly waving others through, trying to look strong while accommodating a reality it doesn't fully control. Reason number 4. The political clock is not on America's side. This is the reason the Pentagon can't fix, because it isn't a military problem at all. It's a calendar. When the strait closes, oil prices spike. When oil prices spike, gasoline at the American pump goes up. The Dallas Fed modeled this directly. A closure removing roughly 20% of global supply pushes oil sharply higher. Their scenarios run from the high 90s into the 130s a barrel, and the longer it lasts, the higher it climbs. A closure of the Strait of Hormuz, removing close to 20% of global oil supplies, was modelled to raise oil prices substantially, reaching as high as $132 per barrel by year end in a longer closure scenario. The World Bank and the IEA tell the same story. A record monthly price surge, a global oil shortage, real demand destruction. Oil prices surged sharply after the outbreak of conflict and the near total disruption of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, with Brent rising about 65% by the end of March to record its highest monthly rise ever. Now layer the politics on top. There are US midterm elections in November of 2026. Every dollar that gasoline rises is a political cost, and the president himself has signalled he's willing to drag negotiations out to extract more from Iran. Trump has indicated he's willing to draw out negotiations to force Iran to make greater concessions and ensure the nation cannot pursue a nuclear weapon. But here's the trap inside the trap. Iran knows about that November deadline too. And when your opponent is on a clock and you are not, you negotiate from a position of enormous patience. Iran doesn't have to win. Iran just has to wait. Reason number 5. The stated victory and the actual situation don't match. In early March, the president's position was blunt. He posted that there would be no deal except, and I'm quoting the actual capital letters here, unconditional surrender. Trump wrote on March 6, 2026, that there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. And in June, in the Oval Office, the framing was that this was going great, that Iran could not be allowed a nuclear weapon, and everyone agreed on that. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon, and everybody agrees to that, Trump said at an Oval Office event. Okay, but hold that up against what was actually happening on the ground. The strait was still effectively shut. The talks had collapsed and restarted more than once. And on the 3rd of June, Iran struck Kuwait's international airport with drones and missiles, killing one person and wounding dozens, shutting down the airport entirely. Kuwait's foreign ministry condemned ongoing Iranian attacks by ballistic missiles and drones that targeted civilian and vital facilities, including Kuwait International Airport, resulting in the death of one person and injuries to others. That is not the behaviour of a country that has surrendered. So you have a profound gap between the narrative of total victory and the reality of a war that will not end. And in my experience, when the words and the facts diverge that sharply, the words are the thing that's wrong. Now, I always want to do the honest thing and argue against myself. So let me build the strongest possible case for the other side. Because if I can't beat the counter argument, you shouldn't trust mine. Here's the steel man. America is still, by an enormous margin, the most powerful military on earth. Iran has been bombed repeatedly. Its leadership was decapitated. Its economy is under crushing sanctions and a naval blockade. No country can absorb that kind of punishment forever. Negotiations are ongoing. Iran's own foreign minister reportedly said a deal was just inches away. Iran's foreign minister said an agreement was just inches away, while criticizing maximalist demands from US negotiators. And the fact that both sides keep coming back to the table is itself evidence the pressure is working. Give it enough time, the argument goes, and Iran has to fold. And I want to be fair. That is a serious argument. It has real history behind it. Economic pressure has broken regimes before. But here is what that argument cannot explain. First, no government in modern history has voluntarily surrendered power while it is actively under foreign military attack. External pressure tends to unify a population around its leadership, not fracture it. The bombing may be strengthening the very government it's meant to topple. It isn't. It remains the most powerful nation on the planet, and that won't change in a year or two. What I'm describing is something subtler and I think more important. This is what it looks like when raw power runs into structural limits, when being the strongest is simply not the same thing as being able to get what you want. So let me leave you with 3 concrete things to watch over the coming weeks. Predictions, because predictions keep you honest. 1. Watch the physical price of oil, not the political statements. There's a real gap between the futures market, which prices in hope, and the price importers actually pay for delivered crude, which has been running far higher. Futures markets drifted back toward $97 a barrel in expectation of resolution, while dated Brent, the price Asian and Middle Eastern importers pay for actual delivered crude, stood at $132 a barrel. If that delivered price stays elevated, the market is telling you the strait isn't really open, no matter what any press conference says. 2. Watch whether the ceasefire framework actually nails down the strait and the uranium in writing, with deadlines and verification, or whether it stays vague. Vague language is not peace, it's a pause, and a pause just resets the same fight for later. 3. Watch the Gulf states. If Kuwait, the UAE, or Saudi Arabia start quietly cutting their own side deals with Tehran for protection, that tells you they've concluded the American umbrella can't actually shield them. And that quiet realignment would matter more than any single missile strike. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Not who's good and who's bad. This isn't a morality play. It's a power game. And in a power game, nations do what nations do. The question is this. For decades, the entire architecture of the modern world rested on one assumption, that the United States could guarantee the free flow of goods through choke points like Hormuz. That was the deal. That was the order. What happens to that world when one mid-sized regional power with cheap drones and a good map proves that the guarantee no longer holds? When the strongest military on earth discovers it can win every battle and still not get the one thing it actually wants, that channel open on its terms? I don't have a clean answer, and honestly, I'm suspicious of anyone who claims they do. What I have is a framework, and looking through that framework today, what I see is a turning point. Quiet, easy to miss, buried under the noise of daily headlines. If this gave you a clearer picture than the news did, share it with one person who's still only watching the surface. Subscribe, hit the bell, because this story is going to move fast over the next few weeks, and I want to walk through it with you when it does. I'll see you in the next one.